Hello, Namaskar, welcome to my pod, the CAA Show. CAA, as all of you know, is Conversations and Analysis, and my name is Juggi Bhasin. So, yesterday, Badlapur in Maharashtra was in the news for all the wrong reasons. The first, of course, was that incident where these young girls were molested by these perpetrators, and thankfully, those perpetrators have been arrested. And I just hope that the severest of punishment is given to those perpetrators. But my podcast today is really what happened after that. The chain of events which unfolded after that. What do these chain of events signify to us? What does it mean for us? Because if some of you had watched the live telecast, which I did in the afternoon, what was happening in Badlapur in that yesterday afternoon was absolutely unbelievable. No doubt the outrage was intense. I mean, when people come to know of an incident like this, your blood boils, you feel angry, you want something immediately to do something to the perpetrators of such a heinous crime. Absolutely. And the anger of the people is completely justified. I understand that. I completely support that. And what had happened was that many angry people started collecting. They stormed the school where that heinous incident had happened. That school is now, I think, in a shambles. And then they all proceeded towards the Badlapur railway station. And then unbelievable scenes unfolded at the station. And you could see these top angle shots taken by the camera. And there were hordes and hordes of people on the railway tracks. For almost 10 to 12 hours, all these suburban trains going from Badlapur to maybe to Mumbai to other places, all the long distance trains which are passing through Badlapur, all were stopped for almost 10 to 12 hours. These people just filled up the tracks and the railway station. The situation was completely going out of hand. Huge amount of violence could have broken out, and then a sizable police contingent was rushed in. The police were from all over from the state. They were rushed in, a very big police contingent, and then stone throwing started. Now, if you have seen railway tracks, then if you see any railway track, you will see the stones which lie on the railway tracks. Those are really heavy, sharp-edged stones. One stone, if a stone hits you, a person can actually die from the impact. Those kind of stones were hurled at the police. It's a miracle that there were not too many injuries, not too many people were wounded in that. And then the police lathi charged. And the lathi charge was effective. The crowd was dispersed. Some of those people have also been arrested. But that is just the chain of events. What really is worrying is that this mob was galvanized and mobilized within a matter of hours, not even days or months or anything, within a matter of hours. And you just have to see those scenes. Huge amount of these crowds had filled up the entire railway station as if they had all emerged from nowhere. I'm repeating myself again that the outrage was so intense, the anger was so great that everybody felt like protesting. I buy that. I completely understand that. I understand that. But the fact also is that what happened yesterday, this mobilization of the crowd, is very worrying, because it looks like something straight out of the playbook of what had happened in Bangladesh only a few weeks back. It looked like a ditto, a photo play of what the proceedings of what had happened in Bangladesh. I want to discuss all that, the implications of this photocopy mob mobilization, which has already started, I think, in our country. People who think that that kind of problem could occur in India, I'm sorry to say, but that problem is already occurring in India. This is probably the beginning of the curve of that problem. We need to discuss this problem. We need to discuss the implications of this problem, the methodology of this problem, maybe who are the people behind it. We need to take an overview of the entire chain of events as it is unfolding right before us, and the implications it has for us, the ordinary citizenry. I'm going to talk about all that, but as usual, before I do that, I would urge all of you to please subscribe to my channel. All you have to do is to press that red button on your screen. Subscription is, of course, completely free. And I keep saying my podcasts are different. The ideas are very different in there. Also, would really appreciate if you could like the podcast and you could share our video if you have liked it with your friends, colleagues, and peers. So thank you for listening to that particular message. Now let's address the problem straight away. Why is this an event which really needs, where we really need to get worried, where we really need to do some accounting, where we really need to set up and take notice? Because this event which happened in Badlapur yesterday was exactly on the lines of what has been happening in Bangladesh. It was almost like some forces were directing those events which are happening in Bangladesh to the same kind of events they start taking place in India. And this is probably the first of its kind in India. Mark my words. Before I even discuss this problem in detail, let me first add a caveat. I'd like to start by saying that there is no smoke without fire. The point which I'm making is, I'm repeating myself probably for the third time, but I think this is very essential that people don't understand that I'm more worried about the mobocracy or the mob effect. And I'm not talking so much about the heinous crime. Absolutely, that heinous crime is something which cannot, it needs to be punished. Those people need to be, if necessary, hanged or whatever the severest punishment that needs to be meted out. The point which I'm making is that these things or these events can only happen where the justice delivery system is not working properly. And I think it's not only Badlapur, but probably all across the country, we are finding that a justice delivery system has been found wanting. Now, what do I mean by that? There are two dimensions to it. The first dimension is that the problem actually is occurring at the Thana level. At the Thana level, the policeman who takes in your report, or rather who doesn't take in your report, because the Badlapur incident actually all started because no FIR was registered by the policemen for almost 12 hours. Probably they were protecting somebody, probably they did not want to, they were too lazy to file the FIR, or somebody had given a call to them. I don't know. These investigation will throw up all the real truth. But the fact is, the police, in almost 8 out of 10 cases, is almost found wanting in registering the complaints of people, in lodging it and drawing up an FIR. And why is this happening? We have to ask ourselves. And the simple reason for that is because more and more we find that the police are always working for the VIPs and not so much for the common citizen. Their entire attention, their entire focus, their entire energy is directed towards the politicians, the VIPs, the top people, and they hardly have any time for ordinary people. And that is the big problem. So the problem really is at the Thana level, which needs to be very, very quickly addressed. Because if there is no redressal for people, and let me also add out here that the entire experience, even if you land up in a police station or in a Thana to lodge a report, is very, very unpleasant. I'm not saying that police stations have to be like hotels there you need a very pleasing experience, not at all, but there should be not fear, but there should be respect. When you go to a police station, you should not be fearful of the police. You should have faith in the police, you should have respect for the police, where you know that you will be given justice if a problem occurs. But that unfortunately is not the case at the moment. That's the first part of the problem. The second part of the problem really is, and I don't want to comment too much about it because I certainly will never ever cross a line when it comes to our courts and all that, because I have a lot of respect for our courts, but maybe it's time when at the highest levels also our judiciary also takes note of the fact that sometimes furloughs, and there is something called prison furlough. Prison furlough means that you get time off from a prison sentence. It could be up to 20, 25, 30 days also. Prison furloughs are given to very, very important people, and that also at the time of elections, and you will understand who I am talking about. Some cases are expedited of very important people. Hearings are held for very important people. Hearings are held sometimes at midnight also for very important politicians or people. Uh, Most of these VIPs jump the queue, as it were, because there is such a backlog of cases. And all I'm saying is that maybe it's time even the judiciary probably has a look. This is a humble, earnest appeal for the judiciary that please do something about this, because this lessens the faith of people in the justice delivery system. Ordinary people feel they are not getting justice, their problems are not being addressed, and just by making whether it's politicians or judiciary or other important people, just by making big pronouncements doesn't solve the problem. It has to be all solved at the ground level. Cases have to be disposed of quickly. All people are equal in the eyes of the law. Why should one politician get preference as compared to, let's say, an ordinary citizen? These kind of anomalies in our system, these kind of inequalities have to be removed away, and only then this anger which is now brewing up inside the people can be contained. So the short point again being that there is genuine anger amongst the people, no question about it, but there are also agent provocators. There are vested interests floating around in our country, in every city, in every nook and corner of this country, which are waiting to tap this rising anger of the people. This rising anger of the people against the inadequacies of the justice delivery system. Also, the inadequacies of our social justice system. All these things, and there are people willing to exploit that for their nefarious ends. And therefore, the second point we need to understand in this entire matter is the mobilization part of it. Like yesterday was, when I was watching this live proceedings, live telecast, I couldn't believe my eyes what I was seeing. It was in front of me. You could see the crowd was growing thicker and thicker and bigger all the time. It was like people were coming from all over and they had swarmed the railway station. And I'm saying again, maybe for the fourth or the fifth time, I'm sure 90% of the crowd were genuine protesters. People really were angry. You could see the anger in their eyes. But I'm sure there were a lot of people also who were agent provocators. And that is what people do. The method of mobilization is that today it's very easy, it's very simple to galvanize a flash mob. And I'm using the mob not so much as a derogatory reference to the Badlapur people, but I'm talking in a general sense. Because I'm sure in Badlapur yesterday, most of the people were absolutely genuinely angry citizenry people like you and me who are out there. So the mob is very simple. It's very easy to galvanize on WhatsApp, give a message, there's a call, put in something very inflammatory in the messaging, and within a short time you'll find people collecting. If you remember, there used to be another version of these flash, not mobs, but flash dances, which used to happen at airports, railway station, where these young teenagers would all collect and they would all start dancing together, and people would wonder, where are these people coming from? But today, on a more sinister level, you have crowds of people gathering, and within a jiffy, literally. It's so easy to do that, and this mobilization at very short notice is happening through the WhatsApp, through the social media route. Then, as I said, intermingling with a crowd of genuine protesters are these agent provocators. They mingle with the protesters. They inflame the situation even more. They egg on the people towards violence, towards more and more anger, till a point of no return comes, and then inflame people with what will happen is that out of that situation, violence will break out, which it did yesterday also. And when violence breaks out, then what really happens is somebody gets hurt, injured, or even killed, and therefore new victim stories arrive out of that narrative, and people who are taking part in that protest, they actually forget about the original story, why they had all gathered in the first place. Because now people have new victim stories. The new victim stories are even more powerful in a certain way, and that narrative then starts building up into a kind of a mass movement. It spreads out from a particular confines of a vicinity or a place and starts maybe spreading out to the state, to all across probably the country also. That's how this flash mobbing or the flash mobs are galvanized to uproot the existing social system. And I fear I'm repeating this again, that probably we are now witnessing the beginning of that cycle, something similar which happened so many months back in Bangladesh. If our administration, if our governments, both the state government and the central government, are not careful, this spillage can spread not only beyond a certain point, beyond a certain, let's say, railway station. It can spread across to the entire state. It can spread to the country. These kind of events have a life force which they can gather. And I think yesterday or the day before, there was a very, very dangerous statement made by a very prominent Kisan leader, who actually has gone on record to say that they did a mistake. They should have galvanized up to, I'm talking of the Kisan protest, during the Kisan protest point, they should have galvanized up to 25 lakh farmers, and they should have gone not to Red Fort, but they should have gone to Parliament. The idea being that they would overthrow the members of Parliament and bring about this kind of a so-called revolution within India. It's unimaginable, but this kind of language, but these kind of words, these kind of ideas are now being freely spoken. They are being discussed. They are now in the public domain. And this is so very dangerous. And I'm repeating myself that we are now at the beginning of the cycle of the same kind of protest. It's not if and when those protests could come to India. They are already here. Badlapur yesterday, I think, was the first sign that this thing is now taking a life form of its own. And if we are not careful, if we don't put out the fire right now, this could spread very, very rapidly. And then when a situation becomes explosive the way it was actually becoming yesterday, and then the other factor, the media, because see, media operates on a 24/7 cycle. Media needs stories, media needs excitement, media needs sound bites, media needs something new constantly happening. And therefore, I mean, I was actually, because see, I have been a trained news person, and a part of me, I listen to the news, but a part of me also analyzes these news persons, this new crop of reporters who have come on the scene, very, very ill-trained, because a lot of them were using inflammatory language. They had no control over what they were saying. And what I'm really trying to say is that many of these reporters lose complete objectivity of what the situation is all about. They start using language, words, egging on people, which is so very dangerous. If something can be done about it, then something should be done about it, because we are heading a very, very dangerous line. So the media then contributes to the explosive problem and makes it absolutely combustible. And as you know, combustible substances are bound to explode and cause so much of mayhem and damage and death. And then, as I said, there are these forces both within the country and outside the country. We know that, we have discussed, but that's not the main issue which I want to discuss in today's podcast. We know that there are foreign forces. We know there are foreign intelligence agencies. We know that there are people within this country, especially in the media. There are social influencers now, some of them in the pay of these foreign forces, some of them who have sympathy for these foreign forces. They have a certain agenda which they want to carry out, and then these forces have band together, they galvanize, and then what they do is they make this problem, if it is, let's say, 2x of a problem, then they make it into 20x. They magnify the problem till it seems as if this problem has overtaken the entire country. And what does it lead to? It leads to chaos, it leads to anarchy, and then you have what is called, ultimately, the ultimate being the uprooting of the existing social, economic and political system. Maybe that is really the end goal of these people. And therefore, now let me talk about, despite all this, yet there is something which saves us, especially us Indians. And what is that? And I'm going to talk about that. What really saves us from this almost doomsday scenario, I would say, from this Bangladesh type of situation. Or at least it has been saving us so far. One doesn't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Is the fact that it's not a very effective administration that saves us. It's not a very effective or a strong government, whether at the central level or at the state level. And I'm not talking of any particular political party. I'm making a general comment. But what really saves us are our civilizational values. And let me expand on this point. And I'll give you a very interesting example. Take the case of the Palestinian people. I have, as I've been growing up, I've seen the Palestinian people, they fight for their homeland, the protest and everything which they have been engaged in. And they have not been engaged, as some people think that this Palestinian problem vis-a-vis Israel is something very new. It's been going on for decades and decades and decades, as far as I can remember. And it's a very different kind of avatar. Long back, they used to, the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, at certain point in time was actually a terrorist organization led by Yasser Arafat. I've seen those times also. The point which I'm making is, for instance, a community of people like the Palestinians, they're used to protests. Over the years, they have seen nothing but protests, anger, spilling over in the streets all their life. And what really saves us in comparison is our Indian civilization values. I would even say, and I'm not advocating the cause of any one particular community, but in a larger, broader sense, a Hindu community restraint which is there in our civilizational, in terms of family values, in terms of civilization values, where we know enough is enough and we withdraw. And that is why when people say revolutions cannot happen in India, this is absolutely correct, because it is a civilization approach of calmness, sobriety, thoughtfulness that pulls us back. It is also a certain, and I would call it the Hindu way of life also to that extent, which pulls us back from the brink. That is what saves us from a total Bangladesh kind of situation. That has been saving us so far. There is no guarantee that that we go to the brink and then we come back. We don't cross over. But there's no guarantee this will continue as we go forward. One can't say. But the fact is, so far, we have been saved. And I gave you the example of the Palestinians. There are other communities in the world which have only seen conflict. And therefore, their minds are shaped only by conflict. And therefore, they probably only understand the language of conflict. We are also experiencing conflict, our Indian civilization, but the fact is we will have these outbursts, and the outbursts come in the form of riots. Rioting happens a lot in India, but it might continue for a day, 2 days, or even sometimes a week, but it eventually does come to a stop. And then everything goes back to its normal self. Communities then again learn to intermingle and live with each other as before. Revolution doesn't take place. That's because of this Indianness, this Hindu way of life, which we have, the sense of sobriety and calmness which dawns over us. But I'm just wondering, the way Bangladesh has happened, can these things save us as we go forward? Because the agent provocators are very, very strong and they are all out to wreak havoc. And therefore, really, what ultimately is our challenge in these matters? Our real challenge in these matters is that we have now an army, I would say an army actually, not even a few selected people here and there, of agent provocators within and outside this country who really want to uproot our system, replace it with what I call splittist, divisive, smaller unit states, which are easier to control by foreign powers. These people want to tear our societal harmony into shreds, and who have completely given a new meaning to the word of Hindutva, the Hindu way of life. They have interpreted it into something quite horrible. And there are these people who want to tear society into shreds, as I'm saying. So the challenge for us are these people. It's a constant battle, I feel, which is going on. It unfortunately comes couched in the form of that these are very, very intelligent, these are very, very wise people who want to do this because they have taken upon themselves the mantle of being what we call liberal people, of being emancipated people, of being intelligent people who know best, whether in terms of politics, sociology, or in terms of economics. And therefore, these people, I think, are the biggest dangers. They are spearheading this kind of a divisive movement, which we see and exploding in our country at regular intervals. And from our part, I think where it all has to start from, as I said, it really, really has to start if you have to address the problem. It is not so much the laws which the central government will pass or the state government will pass or all this demand for do this, do that, do that. India is full of laws, by the way. We have hundreds and hundreds of laws nobody even cares about, honestly speaking. What it really has to start with are practical things like what really happens at the Thana level, as I said. How does the SHO, the Station House Office of a police station, what are his priorities? Is he a clean cop? Is he a person who will not accept favors, who will lodge an FIR despite any kind of pressure that is mounted on that particular person? We need to start purely at that unit level, at the Thana level, and then once these reforms come in, the anger of the people subsides, then along with our civilizational values, the sense that yes, we will get justice is ensured for us, the respect will come for a justice delivery system. That is what really is a challenge, because as I said, the choice right now in front of us is between a society which is in ferment or a society which is calm, which goes through all the turbulence that might be erupting all over the world, but our society is calm. That is what we really should be striving for. That is what we really should be hoping for. But let's be practical, let's be realistic. The fact is, at the moment, there are huge amount of challenges coming in different shapes, sizes and forms every day, and we just have to be brave enough to face it, sagacious enough to counter it. And as I said, it has to start right down at ground zero. Talk, big laws, all this kind of talk which is going on all the time is not the need of the hour, but practical steps on the ground are the need of the hour. And therefore, on this note, I come to the end of this particular podcast. I hope you liked it, and do subscribe to my show. And till next time, it's goodbye and cheers from my end.